I happened to see something yesterday, a video, and it's one of those things that it turns your stomach when you see something like this. But it really tells you what the folks on the American left are really all about, and simply their lack of respect for humanity. They talk a good game, but they certainly don't play it. 9:34. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 67. There's a woman and she works for Planned Parenthood. Her name is Dr. Deborah Nucatola, Senior Director of Medical Services for Planned Parenthood, apparently nationwide. So she has a very big role in this organization, which Planned Parenthood, as you may know, is the largest provider of abortion in the United States of America. And they will fight tooth and nail to continue in that profitable practice. She sat down with some undercover journalists, and they were posing as buyers of body parts, what they call fetal body parts. Now, this is a little difficult because they're using a camera and microphone that are hidden, so I could do a little interpreting for you. But they're at lunch. This woman, and I'll try to be polite about that, this woman is sitting there sipping Cabernet while she's picking at her salad, talking nonchalantly about what they do with these parts. And she's talking about how the prices vary from body part to body part.
The $30 to $100 price, that's per specimen that we're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How much of a difference can that actually make if you know what's expected or what we need versus?
It makes a huge difference. I'd say a lot of people want liver, and for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance, so they'll know where they're putting their forceps.
She's at the end saying they have to be careful where they put in the forceps, but she said a lot of people really want the liver. And, they want the internal organs, the heart, the liver, various things that they can chop up in their labs. And so this has become a business. On the surface, they always say this is a business that's dedicated to preserving the choices that women have, reproductive choices that women have. But what it's really about, it's about the selling of these parts from these dead babies, which is actually illegal in this country. I was reading up on it. You can go to jail. You can be fined $500,000. But Planned Parenthood is now saying, well, wait a minute. No, she was just talking about shipping costs. We wouldn't actually charge anybody for the body parts. She's just talking, we'd have to charge them, though, for the cost of shipping and all of this. She then gave some details on how they preserve the various organs as they yank the dead baby from its mother's womb.
The head is basically the biggest part. Most of the other stuff can come out intact.
Right.
It's very rare to have a patient that doesn't have enough dilation to evacuate all the other
to bring the body cavity out intact and all that.
So then you're just kind of cognizant of where you put your crossbows. You try to intentionally go above and below the thorax so that, we've been very good at getting heart, lung, liver, because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see that get out intact.
So she's sipping her wine, picking at her salad, saying, yeah, we don't want to crush those certain parts we're going to sell. So, we get in there with the forceps and we reach around. You got to be careful because the head's a really big part. At one point, she also said the heads are really big sellers too. She didn't explain why, but apparently they chop them off and then they ship them off to various sinister laboratories all over the country or world, perhaps. No wonder they encourage so many women to go out and kill their children in the womb because, by golly, look at all that cash that's rolling in. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. You would think as a doctor that she would have taken the Hippocratic Oath. I guess she had to at some point, right? Do no harm. And you stop and you ask yourself, how does this differ from the Nazis who were taking human skin and turning it into lampshades? How does this differ from the Nazis who were yanking the gold out of people's teeth so they could melt it down to use to pay for more war materials? Or turning people that they were killing into soap? For crying out loud, what kind of people are we dealing with in our midst in the United States of America, calendar year 2015? And why do we continue to allow this? This comes from the Daily Caller. The Democrats who are running for president, apparently all silence on this particular issue, The writer Rachel Stoltzfus says, Democratic presidential candidates were silent in the wake of footage released Tuesday showing Planned Parenthood's top doctor allegedly describing how the clinics sell the body parts of aborted babies. None of the declared Democrat presidential candidates, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Senator Bernie Sanders, former Governor of Maryland Martin O'Malley, former Senator Jim Webb from Virginia, and former Governor of Rhode Island Lincoln Chafee responded to multiple requests for comment from the Daily Caller News Foundation about the video. Democrat National Committee Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, also did not respond to multiple requests for comment. And then we get into some detail here. Selling a human body part is a federal felony, and trafficking body parts from an aborted baby is punishable by up to 10 years in prison and or a fine of up to $500,000. These people are animals. Simply put, they are not members themselves of the human race, and they shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a medical table or the stirrups. 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. May God have mercy on their souls. 67 at our studios. I've got more on the way. Speaking of a health issue, this one may not be deadly, but the cost of your health care is going to be going up. Guess why? Well, are they going to be changing the name of the Boy Scouts? Will it now be known as the Gay Scouts? I don't know if you've heard yet. If you're a member of the Boy Scouts in the area, I guess you'd know. Or if you're a local scouting leader, you'd probably already be wondering how you're going to deal with this latest assault on our culture and our traditions. If you're not aware of this, the Boy Scouts have said, all right, yeah, we can have homosexuals as leaders, which has been prohibited by that organization, which is not a government organization. There have been a lot of threats and pressure made about why is it that they go create your own scouting organization? Gosh, think of the fun you can have on a camping trip. Bring them out so we may know them. But here we've got a situation where people have been bowing to pressure. This decision made this week by the Scouts. We didn't get to this yesterday. I've got to squeeze it in at some point this week. Reuters, which is a very liberal, what you call a liberal version of the AP, if you could be more liberal than the AP. The Boy Scouts of America Executive Committee unanimously, that means all of them, approved allowing homosexuals to serve as leaders, officials said on Monday, in a major step toward dismantling a policy that has caused deep rifts in the 105-year-old organization. What deep rifts? It was the people on the outside who were making all of the noise, who are demanding that this change be made. You know, if you're like me and you believe that this lifestyle is a mental illness, and that it's only been media that has tried to convince us otherwise over the last 40 years, what are we up to here? And why do you have to bow to this? What pressure? Everybody that I know in scouting was perfectly happy with this situation and the status quo. The resolution approved by the Executive Committee on Friday follows a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in June to allow same-sex marriage nationwide. It's not marriage then. Marriage is defined as it's a man and a woman. But here you go again. You can call it whatever you want, but it's not marriage. And a call in May from the Boy Scouts president, former U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates, he worked for Barack Obama, remember, who said the ban on gay leadership needed to change. The Boy Scouts said in a statement the move reflected, quote, the rapid changes in society and increasing legal challenges at the federal, state, and local levels, unquote. Legal challenges meaning even though this is a private organization, it was under fire because it will not allow this. Why is there such a need to get these people involved in scouting? Are they going to proselytize for their lifestyle? Do they have to recruit people into this lifestyle? Do they find this will be a good recruiting ground? Get them away from their parents, get them away from their pastors, get them out on the campground, and then you can work with them for a couple of weeks every summer. Because there's no gene that was already discovered when they went through the human genome. There's no homosexual gene. So obviously it comes about in some other fashion. 947, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. And news. I'm not saying anything controversial. I'm just telling you the truth. And that's what we know at this moment. You can reach our program by dialing 736-0300. let me just ask this quote: the rapid changes in society and increasing legal challenges at the federal, state, and local levels. So we're giving up because we don't want people insulting us in court. And number two, rapid changes in society. Okay, let's say in another 10 years, we have people who are lobbying and they win the right because for their own dignity, that's what the court called it, their own dignity, they're allowed to marry horses, cows, and pigs. Are we going to allow those people to run local scouting chapters? Is that going to happen? Or if we suddenly have a change in society where it becomes the norm that we burn Christians and we drag people we don't like up to the top of pyramids, tie them down, hack open their chests while they're alive, and rip out their hearts as part of some new religious ceremony, are we going to allow those people to run our scouting missions across the country? What in blazes is going on here? Just because the whole world has suddenly gone mad, why do you have to follow them straight to hell? 948. 67. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Now, since we're going to have the gay scouts, could we actually have the traditional scouts leave and form their own organization, or would the gay scouts have to take that over too? Because that's what this is really all about. This is when you're being exclusionary, and that's mean. But why can't you have an organization that adheres to certain traditional values and certain notions of men and women? What is wrong with that? We've got about 30 seconds before we reach Mike Gallagher. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Bill, this is Pat. You know, it's to the point, what does the normal people do? How can normal people fight this continuous attacks on Christian life, day in, day out, and making us the enemy? What do we do? Do we have to start becoming ISIS and chop people's heads off? What's the answer? I do not know.
We are going
which way we're going to go.
We're headed for civil war. Let's be honest about it. I mean, no one wants to talk about it. No, and if you even mention it, you're called an advocate of it. I'm just making a prediction. We're headed for civil war. An absolute bloodletting, and the country will split in two. You'll have the left coast and the east coast, and then you'll have normal America in between.
It's a really sad situation.
Well, I got to let you go on that note because we can't miss Mike Gallagher. That's a hard break, but thank you much for the call. Certainly, I've been asking the same question. Gallagher brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. The telephone number is 736-6563. And we're wrapping up today's edition of Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX, as well as newsradio1310.com, where you can hear us online anywhere all over the world. I'm going to postpone, even though I said we would talk about a health issue. It involves a local community here in the Magic Valley. We'll try to get to that tomorrow because I detect that some people out there are a little mystified by the decision of the Boy Scouts of America in suddenly making this change. I know that I was talking to people involved in scouting just maybe a year ago and was told this will never happen. We will never bend to this. And then all of a sudden this guy Gates came in and took over at the national level, and suddenly everything got quiet, and now you have this change. It's 9:54. You're listening to Bill Colley this morning on Top Story, and you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. I guess they're going to have to change the Scout oath. It says morally straight. You know, if you think about it. So I guess the Scout oath is going to have to be changed to gay, I guess, instead of morally straight, or gays are skeptic. I don't know. It's just, but I've got a son and a grandson that are both Eagle Scouts, and it's absolutely unbelievable that the Scout, you allow 2% or less of the population, along with the national media, pressuring the Scouts into something that's just absolutely ridiculous.
And how do we justify, I mean, all of these changes simply in the name of sex? In other words, how people have sex. Why has this become such an overriding concern in our culture?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, the Hitler regime, they called it the pink swastika. It's just a way to break down society and you know, basically form your own little dictatorship, and that's what's happening in this country.
Yeah, Ernst Röhm, who was for a long time Hitler's, right-hand man, was, how shall we put it, of a different persuasion. And then when he was no longer useful, Hitler had him killed.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's really sad what's happened to this country, and people, we better be getting out of those four walls of our church and start standing up for what's right, because morally straight is out the window.
Thank you much for the call. And yeah, the fact of the matter is we're being treated like the minority, and yet we're still the majority in this country. Figure that one out. When just 2% of Americans happen to be of the same-sex persuasion, why are they suddenly in charge of our culture and our everyday lives? You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Hey, Bill, you just made a good point. I don't know if you knew it or not. We're not out there trying to convert them to be straight or anything like that. So what's the deal?
Again, as our last caller said, it's to break down the social order.
Yeah, we're not making them try to be straight.
This. And thank you for the call. I heard Rush mention Cloward Piven the other day, and he doesn't do that very often. Usually Beck is talking about that, but it's the effort by these folks, the academics and those types, and they've gotten their viewpoints now into Hollywood, so they're being reflected in our entertainments. They've gotten them into media, so media now is advocating for these things. Media doesn't any longer report facts. Media simply advocates for these positions, and we're told, oh, well, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so we have to go ahead and do this. And your old religious faith is just a bunch of myth and hokum, and so you've got to get with the program. You've got to get with the movement. I do remember what somebody by the name of he's got a television program, and you can find it online. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Comes from a Roman Catholic perspective, but he urged people. Michael Voris, that's his name. He urged people about a year ago. He said it's time to get on the ark, and you better get on the ark right away. And don't worry about your friends who don't want to get on the ark or people who know and criticize you about it. You've got to get right with God, and if you don't, you're going to be swept away with everyone else. And that will happen. I mean, history shows it. 68, Bill Colley with you. 9:58. God willing, if the creek don't rise, I get to do this all over. Maybe after today's show, who knows? Do this all over again tomorrow between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning. Speaking of Rush Limbaugh, he's up next following news at 10 o'clock from Fox. Sean Hannity following the 1 o'clock news. Beck's program with his fill-ins while his vocal cords are rested. Coming up after the news at 4 o'clock. Dave Ramsey tonight, and of course, Coast to Coast for you night owls during the overnight.